Alright guys, so here's the review of the Berny AM135M. So this is something a little bit different, not the usual one you see from Berny. So it's got the usual packaging, I'm not going to go into detail on that, pop that to one side and we'll get right down to it. And here it is. So they actually call this the Divers Helmet style case. And you can kind of see why. It's pretty unusual, pretty unique. I've not seen anything like this before. If you have, please do let me know down in the comments because I would be interested to know. Because as I say, I've not seen anything like this at all. Really different. Yeah, it's a little unusual, so it's probably not going to be to everyone's taste, but see what you think after watching this review. Now let's get on to the dimensions before we go into any more detail. So we've got a diameter of 40.5, a thickness of 14.3. When it comes to the lug width, it's actually 18mm, but if you look at it, it's actually just for that first link. The second link is actually 22, which is really unusual, as are quite a lot of things on this watch. When it comes to the lug to lug, this is another interesting one because it's, again, slightly different than what you usually see on a lot of watches. So the actual lug to lug is 48.1, but you can see we've got a really unusual mid-link on this. It looks like it articulates in the centre, it looks like two separate pieces, but it's not, it's just one really long one. Thankfully it does drop down pretty quickly, but when it comes to the measurements, I can't really show you what it's going to be like based on that alone, so you'll have to see what it's like on wrist, which I'll show you a bit later on. When it comes to the weight, we've got 196 grams with all links included, and then size for my 7-inch wrist, it's coming in at 184 with those links removed. So as I say, some really interesting dimensions on this, for what is a really unusual and interesting watch. But now let's talk about the rest of the watch, starting with the dial. So let's get a zoom in so you can see in a bit more detail. So the first thing that's probably going to jump out is that applied indice at the top with the Berny logo. Do quite like that, just something a little bit different. Not something you see all that often again. The rest of the indices are also applied as well. And then when it comes to the text on the dial, you've got the Berny branding at the top just below that logo, which is just printed, and then automatic down at the bottom. Then we've got that date window at the 3 o'clock with that Cyclops, which is working really well, magnifying a lot. Then when it comes to the hands, we've got nice length on all of them, and they're all really broad, so plenty of space for Lume too. And we've got those nice red accents on the second hand and also around the hour hand as well. And then we've got those little black sections just on part of the hands just to break it up so it kind of blends in with the dial a bit. I think it's a really nice clean done piece, well, when it comes to the dial anyway. As I say, the rest of it is pretty unusual. And then when it comes to the surrounds around those indices, they are also like a black kind of silver high polish to match those hands, which again is just a nice little design touch. And we've also got the high polish on the bezel as well. When it comes to the rest of the case, it's a mixture of brushed and polished. So we've got that Berny logo on the side there. If you do want to remove the bracelet as well, you use these screws here, so you've got a screw either side. So you do need 2 screwdrivers, one either side, so it's a little bit fiddly to do, but it is possible. But as I say, it might look a bit odd with an 18mm strap due to the size of the watch overall. Then we've got the matching design on the other side with that crown, which is recessed, kind of mirroring the logo on the other side. And then this is where we've got this really unusual case shape, which they're calling a diver's helmet, which you can kind of see where it's coming from. It's kind of reminiscent of that. So the sides of the case are polished, and then the top is brushed. When it comes to the bracelet, that is a mixture of brushed and polished as well. So centre links are polished, outer links are brushed. Nice lot of articulation there, so it's wearing nicely on wrist and comfortable. And you can see we've got polished sides as well, which do gather fingerprints a bit. And when it comes to the links, they're actually push pins. And you can see we've got a really interesting shape with these links as well. I don't really know what you'd call that shape, but I'm sure someone in the comments will probably let me know. There's probably some kind of specific name for it, but I'm not aware of it. And then we've got the clasp here, which is nicely done, with the Berny logo on there. Plenty of micro adjust. And then we've got the fold over. No pushers, it is just a friction based clasp, so it can be a little bit difficult to open sometimes. You've got to get your nail in there. And then it is a milled one. And then when it comes to the case back, just got to zoom in and show you that. So we've got the Berny branding in the centre, the model number, and then the usual kind of specs around the outside. So Sapphire Crystal, 100 m water resistance, automatic, and the fact that it's stainless steel. We've also got a screw down case back as well, and then you can also see these really kind of small lugs for this case, the 18mm. They are really short. There's a lot of case space around the outside. They could have made them 20, I think, which I think might have looked a bit better. But now let's check out if we have actually got Sapphire Crystal, like it says, using the trusty Diamond Selector 2. And yep, we have got Sapphire Crystal. But now let's check out what the Lume's like on this. So got a little bit there already, but let's charge it up, give it a proper chance. If you're not keen on this orange Lume, by the way, they do actually have more standard versions with like a light blue kind of BGW9 colour. So don't worry, the Lume isn't yellow as it's coming up on camera at the moment, it is actually orange. I think hopefully it'll settle down in a second or two and it'll actually pick up more of the colour that it actually is. It's more like the indices before they were loomed up, that kind of orange colour, as opposed to the yellow that is currently on screen. But either way though, you can see that it is really good Lume. Plenty of it on the hands and on the indices, and you can also see we've got that really interesting Berny logo at the top, which is also loomed, which I do really like. It's a nice little design touch that they've done that. Just brings something a bit different again. So in terms of the application, it's evenly applied across the hands and the indices, and also that logo as well. So no issues there. We've even got it on the second hand on the tip of that, which isn't always the case with AliExpress watches, so I do appreciate they've done that. You can even see the Lume kind of bouncing off the inside of that crystal around the edges, where it just catches like the distortion slightly, which again, just adds a little bit of interest. I do really like that too. I've been really pleasantly surprised with the Lume on this. I've had other Bernys before, and the Lume's been pretty good, and this one is on the same kind of level. So, not the best Lume by any means, but given the price of the watch, I think it's punching above its weight in terms of Lume. Definitely far better than the likes of Pagani. So, no issues with the Lume on this whatsoever. And I imagine the other ones that have that light blue are probably going to be even better than this orange one, because this is more of like a old radium style kind of photina almost, something like that. So it's probably going to affect the Lume a little bit. So now let's talk about the movement on this. So as you probably guessed, yes, it's an NH35. So we'll unscrew this crown. Because it is recessed, it can be a little bit fiddly. But once you get it out partly, no issues at all. So if we pop it out to the first position, then we can change the date, pop it out again, and then you can see the second hand stop, so we've got hacking, and then just change the time. And then if we pop it back in, second hand starts again, and then obviously we've got hand winding, all works well, no issues. As I say, really nice crown, nice and grippy, but because it is recessed, it can be a little bit fiddly to get in and out sometimes. As you can see now, I'm struggling to get it back in a little bit, but after a couple of tries you will get it, and it is probably something you will eventually get used to. Part of the issue with it is this little section just around it, like a little slight raised section, just makes it a little bit more awkward than it would have been otherwise. It's to match the design on the other side, so I can kind of understand why they've done it. But now all that's left to do is show you what it's like on wrist, and then we'll wrap this up. And here's what it looks like on my 7-inch wrist. So as I say, it does wear better than you would think, given those slightly odd dimensions and the way those end links work. Because they do drop down pretty quickly, it does wear relatively nicely on wrist. Curves and conforms to your wrist a bit. Yeah, it's still going to be quite thick. There's no getting away from that. But recently I've been doing a lot of smaller watches, so I've had some guys saying they want something bigger, so perhaps this is going to suit them. And then when it comes to this clasp, that fits perfectly because you've got that plenty of micro adjust. And these links are really comfortable as well because they're nice and rounded, and with the articulation it's built into it, it wears really nicely despite the size of it. As I've said a few times in this review, it's just a really unique looking piece. I've not seen anything even close to this, but that doesn't mean it's perfect by any means. I've definitely got a few little issues with this. First thing I'd probably change is those end links. They just need sorting out, just making proper female end links maybe. Also I'd get rid of this polished section in the bracelet, just have it all brushed. I think you've got enough polished details with that bezel and other little bits and pieces on the case and the indices in the hands. You don't need a polished bit on the bracelet. Another thing I'd definitely be changing is that slightly odd 18mm lug width for that first link. I'd be changing it so it's just 22. I think it'd be easier and better to get all the different straps and whatever you want on it. Because at the moment you can't really change this out without it looking a bit odd, I don't think. That being said though, I do quite like it on this bracelet. I think it definitely suits the watch. And I really like the dial as well. Love the applied indices, that orange Lume on this particular version. If you're interested in picking one up, links down in the description as always. But that's it for this one guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.